performed using his servant Elisha continue as we head into the 2 Kings chapter 5. Hi, I'm Ken Godevanis, and this is Digging for Scriptural Gems. Thanks for joining us again today to study verses 1 to 15 of chapter 5. In verse 1, we are introduced to Naaman, captain of the king of Aram's army, who was a valiant warrior that helped him win many battles. Then the rest of the verse is italicized and reads, "But he was a leper." We'll come back to that. And then verse 2 tells us the Arameans, working in bands, had taken a young Hebrew girl captive to wait on Naaman's wife. And the little girl said to her mistress how she wished her master could be with the prophet in Samaria so that he could be cured of his leprosy. Now, of course, once Naaman had heard that, he went to the king and talked to him about it. Immediately, the king told Naaman to go to Samaria, and he also sent a letter to the king of Israel as an introductory or explanatory message. Naaman makes the trip, taking with him 10 talents of silver. Now, some editors say this amounted to about 750 pounds of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 suits of clothes. Naaman finds the king of Israel and gives him the letter, which read, "As this letter says, I have sent Naaman, my servant, to you, that you may cure him of his leprosy." End of quote. Can you spot the problem here? Who were they counting on to do the curing? This raises the issue of what was meant by the word in the Old Testament, the word leprosy, and was it curable? The word leprosy in the Bible is tzarata, T-Z-A-R-A'-A-T, tzarata. That was a broad term for various skin diseases, and the concept of a curable skin disease was understood. The Bible depicts examples of healing from leprosy, including the healing of Naaman and the healing of the 10 lepers by Jesus himself later on in the New Testament. The whole topic of leprosy in the Bible can be a study all by itself. But let's go on. The king of Israel reads the letter and right away tears his clothes and says, "Am I God? Am I the one that can kill and to make alive? The king of Aram is just looking for a fight or quarrel against me." End of quote. Meanwhile, Elijah hears that the king of Israel tore his clothes and sends word asking, "Why'd you do that?" He tells the king to send the man to him, and the man will know and see that there is a prophet in Israel, and implies, by the way, so will you. Now, verse 9 tells us Naaman came with his horses and chariots and stood before Elisha's house. And a messenger sent by Elisha goes out with instructions. Now, you can imagine, there's this commander of the army, chariots and horses, in front of a common man's abode, a prophet's, and he sends out his servant and gives the commander some instructions. "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored." That's physical healing. "And you shall be clean." That's ceremonial cleaning. What more do you want? But we are told Naaman was furious and takes off saying, "I thought the prophet would at least come out to me and call upon his God and wave his hands over the sores and cure me, the leper." In fact, he went on to say that his own land's rivers were as good, if not better, than the Jordan River, and that he could have just as easily washed there and become clean. So he went away in a rage. But his servants tried to talk some sense into him, saying that, look, if the prophet had asked you to do something difficult or weird, you likely would have done it. So why not just follow this simple instruction? Go to the Jordan, dip in it 7 times. Let's see what happens. And Naaman did just that, and he was cleansed. We'll stop there and dig deeper. There's so much to discuss in this passage. This whole account takes on greater significance when we realize Naaman was the chief military commander of a persistent enemy, Aram or Syria, to both Israel and Judah. We also know that Naaman had a lot going for him, but what he had against him was devastating. But he was a leper, which meant that he had a terrible, or horrible rather, incurable disease that would slowly result in his death. No matter how good and successful everything else was in Naaman's life, he was a leper. FDR got struck with polio at age 39. Another president, JFK, had a complex medical history that is now thought to be an autoimmune polyglandular syndrome type 2 with Addison's disease and hypothyroidism. He also had gastrointestinal symptoms from adolescence. Winston Churchill is believed to have suffered from bipolar disorder, or maniac depression, or manic depression rather, throughout his life. It's widely believed that Adolf Hitler suffered from Parkinson's disease along with other issues like irritable bowel syndrome, skin lesions, and potential amphetamine addiction. There's also evidence suggesting he experienced cardiac dysrhythmia, coronary arterial disease, and a possible case of syphilis. What fun. Some historians and psychiatrists have also explored the possibility of borderline personality disorder and a paranoid manic depressive state. And the Apostle Paul had his thorn in the flesh. It seems that everyone who appears to have it all going for them, for good or for bad, always seems to have a personal problem that sometimes ends up being their ruin. Or should I say, often does so. Now next, we cannot miss the role of the young captive girl. She illustrates the mysterious ways God works. Later, we see how Naaman's servants also played a key role. Matthew Henry says this maid was, by birth, an Israelite, providentially carried captive into Syria, and there preferred into Naaman's family, where she published Elisha's fame to the honor of Israel and Israel's God. The unhappy dispersing of the people of God has sometimes proved the happy occasion of the diffusion of the knowledge of God. Check that out in Acts chapter 8, verse 4. End of quote. And we also note that even in captivity, she wanted the best for her master. We can all draw our own lessons from that, and I hope we do. When Elisha responds to the king of Israel, he gave a gentle rebuke. He said, "This is a crisis to you because you have no relationship with the God who can heal lepers. But it is a needless crisis because you could have such a relationship with this God." And isn't that the way it is with a lot of our friends and our relatives? Remember that next time they come to you in desperation. This is a crisis to you because you have no relationship with the God who can deal with this. It's a needless crisis because you could have a relationship with this God. As far as Naaman goes, Charles Spurgeon suggested he was attacked by two enemies: the proud self, who internally demanded that Elisha come out and see him, and the evil questioning, who questioned why he should wash in the Jordan when he had better rivers back in his homeland. Now Naaman overcame both these two enemies and did what God told him to do. Robert Jameson says Naaman, expecting Elijah to wave his hand over parts of his body that were covered with leprosy and he would be healed, stems from the idea that anciently, and still to this day, it's a very prevalent superstition in the East that the hand of a king or person of great reputed sanctity touching or the hand waved over a sore will heal that sore. But why have Naaman dip into the water 7 times? Commentator Keel says the cure was performed based on God's covenant with Israel. by which the land and all pertaining to it was blessed, and 7 was the symbol of the covenant. I want to point out 2 other things here quickly. First, so far in this passage, we have heard nothing about anyone getting all those gifts, silver, gold, suits, that Naaman had brought along to give to his healer. Stay tuned. Secondly, it is with interest that we note how the king of Syria was not fully ready to say or even admit, perhaps because he did not know any better, that it was God that could heal leprosy. He thought the king had a lot to do with it, in keeping with the traditional belief we talked about. But he was wrong. Henry also notes that the king of Syria didn't order the prophet come to him. He didn't send Naaman to him disguised. He didn't send him empty-handed. And he sent him with a letter confirming his own desire and request. His captain and his army and his nation were the ones in need. Finally, we should not miss the fact that God didn't retract his willingness to have Naaman healed, even though he rejected God's chosen way at first. When his servants put some common sense into him, and he humbled himself enough to do what was required as they came to the Jordan River on their way home, God's desire for his healing was still there. And so it is for us and all mankind. So much for us to learn in this lesson. Please draw your own applications, and I'd love it if you could share them with us. Next time, we'll see what happens next to Naaman and to Elisha, and as importantly, Elisha's servant, Gehazi. Remember him? You'll be surprised. Join us for that. In the meantime, if you like what you're seeing or hearing, please indicate so. YouTube requires that they'll keep us on the air. Secondly, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, Digging for Scriptural Gems, please go there now, youtube.com, put in Digging for Scriptural Gems, and then subscribe. Many of you have done that. But above all, I want you to promise me you'll keep on studying God's Word.